What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend and a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we can give thanks for the New York Giants being in top position for a draft pick, very high up the board in the 2025 NFL Draft. Now, if you guys aren't aware, the college football season just ended over the weekend, and so, of course, we've got a lot of risers and fallers in this upcoming draft big board. And we want to go ahead and discuss the quarterbacks at the top because right now the New York Giants currently hold the number 3 overall pick in the draft. However, according to ESPN Analytics, they have the highest chance and probability of landing the number 1 overall pick in the draft with an over 30% chance, the next closest being only 15%. So Giants very likely to be picking number 1 overall, and if they are, very likely to be taking the best quarterback in the draft class. Of course, they could end up trading down. We'll see how that goes, and obviously we'll have discussions over who's making the pick, whether it's Joe Shane, Brandon Brown, or somebody outside of the building stepping in after a house cleaning. All of that is up in the air right now, but one thing that we can focus on is the fact that it is officially draft season for the New York Giants. If we're looking ahead week to week, we know you guys aren't interested. Oh, we're playing the Saints this week. We're probably going to lose again. The Saints have a legitimate offense. We can't score points. Duh. That's really all there is to say about those games. But for the Giants looking ahead to the future, this is a pivotal offseason, a crucial one, and a very intriguing one, because the Giants are going to be in position to draft a quarterback. But do they want to? And if they do want to, which one would they prefer? Obviously, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, son of Deion Sanders. A lot of people view him as a top quarterback. However, there are some that view Miami's Cam Ward as the top quarterback. And those are the two guys that we want to focus on in today's episode and discuss what we think of them, how we feel about the way that they closed out their college football seasons, and how we feel about them potentially being drafted by the New York Giants in April. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And I know that you were keeping a close eye on the Miami football game yesterday versus Syracuse, of course. Miami ended up losing that game and likely won't be in the college football playoffs anymore as a result. Though they still have a chance, they probably won't be in the college football playoffs, so we'll be missing out on Cam Ward playoff football. But he still turned in an excellent performance yesterday in Miami's loss. They just couldn't stop a nosebleed, that defense. But Cam Ward still looked good as he did all season. How are you feeling about him? And also, how are you feeling about the fact that the Giants just keep expressing interest, not only in Cam Ward, but also in Shedeur Sanders?
Well, we know one thing, if we learned anything so far, the Giants are very much interested in Shedeur Sanders. They have sent scouts to his practice. They've sent the GM. They've sent the assistant GM. They've sent the head of player development. Everyone and their moms in the Giants organization has been to watch Shedeur Sanders play. Now, we're going to break down kind of their stats side by side, see where they kind of match up. You know, looking at the play styles, they're quite different. You know, Sanders a little bit more of a traditional NFL player in the sense that he does all the little things well. He's very, very accurate. He's playing in an NFL system that's led by Pat Shurmur. They don't really do a lot downfield, but he makes a lot of really simple, easy throws accurately. He can do some stuff. He keeps his eyes downfield. He can pick up yards on the ground when he needs to. But obviously, this is one of the most accurate throwers in the game right now in college football, the 73.6% completion rate and an 82.7% adjusted completion rate. Those numbers are ridiculous. You don't see numbers like this very often from a guy like Sanders specifically, playing in a system that is ready for the NFL. That's awesome. That's why, anonymous GM Brandon Brown is saying good things about him to Jordan Reed of ESPN. I think we can kind of assume that it was Brandon Brown based on the way that he's been talking about him. He's been scouting him. And obviously, he is an assistant GM, and he kind of fits the criteria for what Jordan Reed said was an anonymous piece of information. But look, I like Sanders. I think he's a good player. But the best way I can describe this, Anthony, Sanders has a higher floor, but a much lower ceiling than Cam Ward. Cam Ward has a much higher ceiling, but a lower floor. Do you want to be in a situation where you're perennially kind of in purgatory, where the Giants are now, where they were with Daniel Jones? Or do you want to have that upside to be okay, this guy could be a superstar? I don't think Sanders is ever going to be a superstar, but I think he could level out at a solid player, but not good enough to win legitimate playoff games. I think Cam Ward in that hero ball style, if he can kind of get that under control and balance it out a bit more, which we saw Josh Allen do over the course of a couple of years. Now, of course, I don't want to use him as an example because that's one unicorn among many fails and busts. But at the moment, what I will say is this. The Giants, look, the only reason Joe Shane and Brian Dable, if they're given another chance to correct their mess, is because they haven't gotten a chance to pick their quarterback. We all kind of know they picked Daniel Jones to be the guy to help them solidify their jobs and long-term rebuild outlook. That failed miserably. They made that decision. They have to live with it. I think they picked their quarterback. They could have drafted somebody else. They could have turned the leaf. Instead, they doubled down on a mistake. So I do think that in hindsight, of course, easy to say, but a lot of people still think that they want to see Dable get a quarterback that he can develop, he can grow, and he can kind of build a team around, which I can understand that. I want to see him do that too. I just think 3 years, the worst year being the third year of a rebuild, it's hard to come back from. But if they do keep these guys, I think you go with the highest possible upside player. And I think Cam Ward is the highest possible upside player because at the very least, you get 2 years to see if he can reach that potential, and then you turn things over when Arch Manning gets to this draft. There's a couple other guys that are really, really talented. Some amazing young quarterbacks being developed over the next couple of years until they eventually declare for the draft. So the Giants could reset and then kind of go after another passer if it doesn't work out over 2 years. They could go down that path. That's a realistic avenue for the Giants, but that means they have to draft one now. But Anthony, looking at Sanders, Cam Ward, how do you compare their ceilings and floors? How do you see these two guys? We'll talk about their final regular season. They both lost, by the way. But, Cam Ward put up 38 points and still lost. I don't really know what more you're supposed to do from a quarterback's perspective. Put up 38 points. You're supposed to win those games. Defense was horrid. Obviously losing to Syracuse. How do you kind of evaluate these two players in the terms of who has the higher ceiling, who has the higher floor?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm in agreement with you. I feel as though Cam Ward has a higher ceiling. I do feel like Shedeur Sanders has a higher floor, though. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Shedeur Sanders runs a pro-style offense. He plays for Pat Shurmur as his offensive coordinator, a name that all Giants fans are familiar with. Former head coach of the New York Giants, turned to a collegiate offensive coordinator. He has gotten the most out of Sanders, out of Travis Hunter. He's built a great pro-style but screen-heavy offense for Colorado, and Sanders runs it to a T. And that's what people love about Shedeur Sanders, and that's why, me not necessarily, Alex, but there are many who will argue he does have the higher ceiling. And here's why. A lot of playing quarterback in the NFL is pre-snap processing, and that is where Shedeur Sanders excels. Does Cam Ward excel there? Probably not as much because he doesn't have the experience in that pro-style offense. But those pro traits, the ability to make decisions at the line of scrimmage, to read and diagnose a defense, and then take that, carry it over once the ball is snapped and make plays, that is where Sanders excels. And so that's why he does have a higher floor, and it could, in the long run, give him a higher ceiling because processing really is everything for NFL quarterbacks. And Shedeur Sanders is probably the best pre-snap and post-snap processor in this draft class. So I love Cam Ward for his off-script and superhero abilities. Those are great. But if we're talking about translatable traits to the NFL, processing is probably number one on that list. If you are a good processor at the collegiate level, you've already got a step ahead of the rest of the competition once you get to the pros. And that's why GMs, scouts, and fans fall in love with a guy like Shedeur Sanders and why he will be a top pick in the upcoming draft class. Now, Alex, before I give my take on Cam Ward, I want to take a look at BetUS, the sponsor of this episode. Thank you to BetUS. Of course, guys, I'm taking a look at today's Monday Night Football game, Browns versus Broncos. Two good defenses, interesting matchup here. Not necessarily the most exciting for a Monday night game, but hey, if you want to take a good prop, take the Anthony Rivardo passing yards over. I'm in my flag football playoffs tonight, and I am about to lock in and go crazy. Just kidding. But going ahead and taking a look at this Monday Night Football game, this is the line that I like, Alex. Denver Broncos over 23.5 points. Now, my logic behind this one, they've cleared this in 2 straight games. 38 points versus the Falcons 2 weeks ago. 29 points versus the Raiders last week. And I know that the Browns do have a very good defense, but in recent weeks, it's been a little bit questionable. While they did hold the Steelers to 19 points, they let the Saints pile up 35 points, the Chargers 27 points, and the Ravens 24 points. So 3 of their last 4 games, that line has been cleared. So I do like the Denver Broncos, who are on a tear recently, to clear over 23.5 points. So I'm going to go ahead, throw $10 down on that and see if I can win a little bit. But guys, make sure to go check out BetUS. Great lines over there. The fastest sportsbook or fastest payouts in the industry among all sportsbooks. Use code YouTube150 for 150% deposit match up to $2,000. So go check out BetUS. Now, back in, Alex, I want to talk about my guy, Cam Ward, and I want to just read out a quote that I already sent you today, and we posted on a Fireside Giants, but this is the epitome of why I like Cam Ward. I wrote this in an article this morning. I'm going to read it out. The biggest knock on Cam Ward is his tendency to play hero ball, but the New York Giants need a hero. Ward could be their Superman. I love that quote. I wrote that. I thought it was awesome, and I think it just perfectly encapsulates the reasons why I like Cam Ward so much. And to my credit, and for the record, go back on the channel all the way to April if you want to listen to my mid-round gems that I was pointing to. Cam Ward was one of them because he did initially declare for the 2024 NFL Draft. I have not just had my eye on him through this season. I had my eye on him last season. I thought in the last pre-draft process, if the Giants don't take a first-round quarterback, give me Cam Ward in the third. I said that on this channel for sure. And I said that a lot to my friends and to my family. I wanted Cam Ward in the last draft if the Giants weren't taking a quarterback in round one. Well, they didn't take a quarterback in round one. They didn't take a quarterback at all. They rolled the dice with Daniel Jones. It didn't work out, and here we are. Cam Ward, once again, the topic of conversation. So you guys already know, I loved him last year. I love him this year. I think he's a tremendous prospect. And the hero ball doesn't concern me because I think he's a much cleaner prospect than what he's given credit for. I made the point, the Giants need a hero. They need someone who can play hero ball and get off script. But if you really watch Cam Ward play, a lot of his yardage and a lot of what makes him so great is in the pocket. He stands firm, he has poise under pressure, and he navigates the pocket really well. If pressure comes from the right side, he shifts seamlessly to the left side. If it's in his face, he'll drop back. If it's behind him, he'll step up in the pocket. He does those things so well. And not to rag on Daniel Jones, but one of the things that we had a problem with over the last 6 years was a lack of pocket presence from the quarterback. I know you guys remember that 2019 season. Daniel Jones fumbled a historic 18 times or whatever ridiculous number it was. What did that stem from? A lack of pocket presence. Cam Ward doesn't have that issue. He's got great pocket presence. He's accurate. His arm is strong, and he can get out of the pocket and make plays. It's not because he gets out of the pocket and makes plays that I love Cam Ward so much. It's because he does all these things and can get out of the pocket and make plays. It's an in addition thing that makes me so excited about Cam Ward's off-script ability. But I love the rest of his game, as I did when he was at Washington State, Alex. And here's the thing. This is what I love to point to. 2023. Guess who Washington State played with Cam Ward under center last year? Colorado. Go look at the stats of that game. Quarterback versus quarterback. Stack it up. Shedeur Sanders got completely outclassed and outplayed by Cam Ward. Now, I know there's other factors involved. Talent across the board. It's a team sport. It's a team game. I understand that. But Cam Ward lit that defense up. He had 5 total touchdowns against Colorado, or 4 or 5 touchdowns. Shedeur didn't even have 200 passing yards. I think that said a lot for a precursor towards this season and what we're looking ahead to. And again, that's not a knock on Shedeur, but it just shows me, I think Cam Ward probably knew. This is a big matchup for me, for my draft stock. This is a battle. I got to win this. He went out there and he won it. And I really liked what he did at Washington State last year. Was worried when he transferred to Miami. Historically not good at developing quarterbacks, but he bet on himself and he's become a monumental success. And I love players that bet on themselves and win those bets because those are the players who will bet on themselves in the NFL and bring success to an NFL franchise. That's what I'm looking for. So that's my current feeling on Cam Ward. And again, I like Sanders as well, Alex. But as I said, Giants need a superhero. Let Cam Ward be that Superman.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a player, when you watch him play, and, I've been watching a lot more of him, especially the live games. And, let's talk about this most recent performance. We'll talk about Sanders as well, who, was excellent. So Cam Ward against Syracuse, 69.4% completion rate, 76.5% adjusted completion rate. Great numbers. Like that's from an NFL perspective, if he does that in an NFL game, we're very happy with that. But what I like the most about Cam Ward, Anthony, and one of the things that really makes me excited about what he can do in the NFL is his pressure to sack ratio. So what percentage of times does a pressure on him turn into a sack? He has a 16.9% pressure to sack ratio and 9.1% in this last game against Syracuse. What that means is when he is pressured, he rarely takes sacks. He's able to maneuver around them. He's able to escape the pocket, buy time. And one thing that you love, and this is one of the worst things about Daniel Jones over the last 6 years, when he takes pressure, he rarely keeps his eyes downfield. He always drops his eyes. He always either goes to check down, and that's why players just play man coverage against his running backs, against his tight ends, because they're just basically, everyone knows they're not doing anything special. Everyone knows they're just check down options for the most part. They rarely ever targeted their tight ends downfield, which is, just ludicrous in my opinion. But with that being said, Daniel Jones was never able to keep his eyes downfield. Cam Ward, the one thing, if you can say he does excellent, aside from his pocket awareness and his ability to maneuver and not take sacks, is his ability to buy time and always have his eyes downfield. If you're a Giants receiver and you have Cam Ward at quarterback, you better be running secondary routes. You better be ready to run extra routes and get open because he is going to buy time and you have to always be moving. That was one of the things the Giants have. I mean, Anthony, how many times have you seen the Giants run secondary routes after their routes, finish and they have to find another way to get the ball? I rarely ever see the Giants do that because Daniel Jones never, ever was able to make those throws. This is what Cam Ward does for a living. You call it hero ball, but plays that our quarterbacks would have taken for a sack or thrown into the ground or made a bad decision about, Cam Ward will make bad decisions, but it's only because he's able to put himself in a position to make a decision to begin with, right? Those bad decisions a lot of times happen because he escaped a sack, because he escaped a bad situation and found an opportunity to make a play happen. A lot more times than none, it's a positive play for Cam Ward. More often than not, it's not an interception. It's not a bad decision. It's more often than not a good decision. I am willing to live with the interception every now and then and a bad, stupid decision because he's going to put up points making these hero ball kind of situations happen because of that ability to maneuver, feel pressure. He gets rid of the ball at the perfect times a lot of times when pressure's incoming. So, he's able to keep his head up, but his peripherals are so good that he's able to feel what's around him. Sanders has a similar ability. He is able to feel that pressure. I don't think he's as good of an athlete as Cam Ward, and I think that a lot of times, that offensive line being bad in Colorado is actually a good thing for Sanders because the Giants probably won't give him much better. So I do think that from a perspective of Sanders being ready to be a Giants quarterback, he's probably as well equipped as anybody because of that porous offensive line. But he did have Travis Hunter. I love LaJohntay Wester. We'll do a lot more in-depth evaluation on Wester, who I think could be a really good slot option for the Giants, especially if they don't want to re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson long-term after next season. Wester's a really, really talented player who might go in like the 3rd or 4th round. At the moment, looking at Cam Ward, what he did against Syracuse, yeah, they lost, but he put up 38 points. You can't blame Cam Ward for that loss, man. You can blame Miami's defense for that loss. And he was able to make plays happen, climb the pocket, do all sorts of good stuff. He had 349 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. I think that for the most part, I was really impressed with Ward. He's able to. One thing I really like about him, Anthony, I think you'll appreciate this. You know what? Remember why OBJ was so good as a rookie, so good throughout his career with the Giants until the injuries and eventually being traded? Because Eli Manning knew how to maximize a WR1. Eli Manning knew how to make a star receiver a superstar. That's what he did. That is what made Manning man. That's why Plaxico was so good. Victor Cruz was so good. Why freaking OBJ was so good. That's why they dominated for so long, because Manning maximized his talent. Cam Ward has the ability to maximize his best receivers. Xavier Restrepo, great receiver, good receiver, primarily a slot option. Just set all the records from Miami this past season. Cam Ward knows how to find his best playmakers, and he knows how to maximize that talent. I have no doubt in my mind that Cam Ward and Malik Neighbors would be an absolute star combination. I'm not saying Sanders wouldn't, but I just think Cam Ward also has that capability. Travis Hunter is just a freak, man. You just throw the ball up, he's going to make a catch. A lot of times I saw Sanders make not so great throws, like literally just 50-50 balls, and Travis Hunter would make a play happen. Like that's just, that was Hunter's game. I rarely saw Ward throw balls up to Xavier Restrepo like that. He found him. He found his receivers. So I think it was a little bit different of a dynamic because, Restrepo's not even close to as good as Travis Hunter. So I think that's like first and foremost. Like Colorado had better weapons, worse offensive line. Cam Ward had better offensive line, worse weapons. But, how do you see that variable? The fact that I think Cam Ward would maximize a player like Malik Neighbors, would find him the ball, would allow him to do more on secondary routes. I think that may be an element to his game that may be a little bit more developed than Sanders, but not to say Sanders can't do that. More so, I just like Cam Ward's ability to kind of go off script and maximize these top talents.
Yeah, I kind of see it differently, I think. I think Cam Ward is a tremendous talent, and I like his ability to get off script, and the second routes and all that stuff is great. But I actually think the way that you maximize a wide receiver's talent is to play within the confines of a system and to maximize the system. And that's what I think Shedeur Sanders does really well, and that's why he and Travis Hunter have had such a hell of a season. And the other receiver whose name you mentioned, who's escaping my mind right now at Colorado, who was tremendous this year.
Jonte Wester.
Yes, Wester. Wester's tremendous. I love him as well. And I think the fact that him and Hunter have had such successful seasons as receivers has a lot to do with Sanders, his pre and post snap processing and ability to play within a scheme. And again, I'm going to keep going back to the processing for Sanders because I think that's his biggest calling card. The fact that he can read a coverage and say, all right, I know that on this play, Hunter has one-on-one coverage. I'm going to throw it up to him and just give him a chance to make a play, and then he does that. That's the thing, Alex, is, you can look at players and say, well, how much is it the quarterback and how much is it the talent around him? But we've seen quarterbacks in the NFL play with tremendous amounts of talent around them, but unable to maximize that talent. Let's even say that it's, if you want to bring this recent example of Malik Nabers and Daniel Jones, let's do that. How many times this season, Alex, do you think Malik Nabers has been running a 9-route? Just go straight down the field with one-on-one coverage and the ball never came his way because he was covered. Yeah, sure, he was covered, but if you throw it up there 50-50 and if you throw it the right way, it's more like 60-40 for a guy like Nabers, and you can create yardage by just giving your guy a chance. But does Nabers get that chance? Not exactly. And why do you think that is? Is it because Daniel Jones is afraid? Is it because offensive line problems? Offensive line problems have a lot to do with it. Daniel Jones being afraid probably isn't it. I'm sure he would like to throw the ball to Malik Nabers. It's probably more so he's not processing what the defense is giving him. And that's always been an issue for the Giants under Daniel Jones. And again, this isn't an episode to rag on Daniel Jones. Just stick with me. I'm making a point here. Sanders is so good because he can see the defense, see the coverage. Oh, that's where that safety is. That means this player is one-on-one. I'm throwing it up there. And then he puts it in a position for Travis Hunter to make a play. And it's the processing that makes that play possible. It's not just playing hero ball or not being afraid to throw it up. Because a lot of the times with hero ball, Alex, when Cam Ward's getting out of the pocket running around, he's not ending up throwing it up to one of his players. He's waiting for them to get open, he's buying time, and then he's hitting them. And that's a tremendous trait as well. But when we're talking about the hero ball that Sanders plays, it's more like, I'm going to read the coverage, and at the exact moment that they leave me an opportunity, I'm taking that opportunity. It's that decisiveness that creates plays for Wester, for Hunter, for these guys to get into these one-on-one matchups, and for Sanders to throw a back shoulder fade where they can make the play. So a lot of it's processing. It's also a tendency to be aggressive, but it's also carefulness, being aggressive at the right time, knowing what coverage you have and when to take that shot. And that's the best case that I can make for Sanders. He knows when he has a certain coverage. He knows when to take that shot, and he knows who's going to be open on each play. I actually think, Alex, it was a Tom Brady video, and he was playing golf with a professional golfer. I can't remember which golfer it was. I don't know if you've seen this video, but he kind of stands there and he talks about, well, the NFL has a quarterback development problem because of processing, and he breaks it down. Find the video, guys. Go check it out because it'll really open your eyes to a lot of the problems going on with young quarterbacks in the NFL. But he pretty much breaks down and says, to paraphrase, there's a processing that needs to take place pre and post snap. And now, because players get rushed into the starting lineup, they're not allowed to learn how to do that processing. But we used to process and know where the ball was going and who I can hot read to. And even if I don't like the route combination, I can change the route combination. Those are things that current young NFL quarterbacks are struggling to master. Guys like Brady, Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, all of them mastered the pre-snap, post-snap process. Shedeur Sanders is on his way to mastering that, and that's the argument that I will continue to make for him. Again, Tom Brady would throw up 50-50 balls to Rob Gronkowski, right? And it wasn't just because Rob Gronkowski is an amazing player. I'll even harken back to his deep throw in the Super Bowl against the Rams, Alex. The Patriots barely threw the ball that game. They couldn't get anything going through the air. However, one play in the fourth quarter, the Rams bailed on a coverage. Tom Brady recognized it, takes the shot down the seam. Gronkowski catches it, down inside the 5, touchdown, Patriots win. That kind of decisiveness, knowing what you have pre-snap, what you have post-snap, how to hit that receiver, and when to take that opportunity, that's what makes an elite NFL quarterback. And again, That's the trait that Shedeur Sanders has. That's the best way that I can really describe it. Use one of the best examples of Tom Brady. Again, go find that clip. It's so great the way that he breaks it down and discusses how important processing is. But if you find that clip and you think about these two quarterbacks, I'm not saying that Cam Ward's bad at this or he can't do this. I'm saying that's the strength of Shedeur Sanders, and that's a strength that can turn you into an absolute superstar in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I said earlier on is sometimes like in the Giants, I get why they like Sanders because he's coming into the NFL with the ability to do all the little things right. Like you're saying, what made Tom Brady so great? He did every little thing right. Pre-snap, post-snap, accuracy, all of that stuff was 99% of the time pitch perfect. Sanders, pre-snap is great, post-snap is great. He's obviously extremely accurate. I mean, this most recent game against Oklahoma State, not really a great defense by any means. We had 438 yards, 5 touchdowns, and the interception was a tipped ball. 81% completion rate. Anthony, 90% adjusted completion rate, and he had 2 drops in that game. Like, you know, you're looking at a player that, the best way I said it before, has a high floor but a lower ceiling than Cam Ward, and Cam Ward has the higher ceiling but the lower floor. That's kind of how I best can kind of give you an example of how I visualize these two players. But here's the thing. If you're the Giants, and I think this is where you argue on behalf of both these players, and we're not talking about character right now, like we're talking about pure profile as a player. You know, you guys can argue all you want in the comments about whether or not Sanders is going to explode, if they're bad, if Deion's going to let him come here. Like that's, you know, we're just talking them as purely as prospects at the moment. But if you're Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, and you are retained, you need to show progress next year. Your rookie quarterback has to look better than Daniel Jones did this past season, right? Has to. You know, you have to start at a higher benchmark. You cannot start from ground zero. I think, look, every rookie quarterback's going to have issues, but you can't have like a situation where you usher in a young player that you just spent a first overall, second overall pick on, and they are really bad. They're bad, worse than Daniel Jones, which would lead you to the worst offense in football. You need to have a good foundation, which is why I get why they like Sanders, because he's going to come in with an NFL system basically already understood. He's going to understand how to process information pre-snap from an NFL system. He's going to understand what it takes to navigate a bad offensive line. He's tough as nails. Like, if there's anything you can say about Sanders, man, I've watched him take some monster hits this year. Monster hits. And he's bounced right back up and got right back in there. Like, I saw one that should have ended his season, like, you know, knees, like right knee shot. And oh my God, I mean, I thought his career was over, out of his freaking season. Like, it was ugly, but he was a millimeter off the ground and he was able to swing and he was back on the field the next play. You know what I mean? Like, this is a dude that's going to take those shots. He's going to get right back up, and it's Matthew Stafford-esque in a lot of ways, and I respect that out of him.
Yeah, and I want to actually add on to that point about taking those hits and everything, because I actually watched a clip. I think Shedeur Sanders was on a podcast of a teammate or something, and he was discussing that hit that he took to the knees, and something that he said I thought was really cool and really highlighted his attention to detail. What he said was, yeah, so if my foot was planted, we're probably not doing this show, basically. Again, paraphrasing, but essentially what he was saying is that if his foot was planted, he would have suffered a significant injury. But he had left his feet, and he had kept his feet bent, or his knees bent. And this is part of what he said that I thought was really cool, Alex. He said when he's in the pocket, he always ensures that his knees are bent. He's always making sure that if somebody falls onto him or lands on his knees or takes a shot below his waist and tries to bang him down low, he always has his knees bent, because when your knees are straight, that's when you suffer injuries. And he said it's all in the little details that I pay attention to. And I thought that was really cool. And I thought you might find that information pretty interesting as well, Alex. The fact that Sanders, he's one of those players who has such a keen attention to detail that not only is he doing game film and studying the details of a defense, he's studying everything down to how can I make one adjustment in the way that I stand in the pocket to make sure that I stay healthy. And I thought that was really cool and eye-opening, just to the attention to detail that Sanders truly possesses.
Well, I mean, look, this is the type of detail that you get when your dad was an unbelievable NFL player and he has connections to the best NFL players in history. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you get when you're learning from a guy who's been in the league, from peers who've been in the league, from his friends who are some of the best players ever. Like, Sanders is coming into the NFL with a breadth of information that Cam Ward simply cannot replicate. And the reason is because his dad was there and because dad was one of the best athletes ever. Like, that's just a product of being Deion's son. There are pros and cons. Deion will have a say in where he goes. Deion will have a say in his situation, will have a say in everything he does. But he's going into the league with an NFL-ready mentality, and I think that toughness, that ability to adjust, that ability to read his field, that ability to process, that ability to lean on your top receivers, like that, all those things make you a great prospect. And I've come around a lot more on Sanders than I was, and I'll admit that for sure. Like, I was not a Sanders fan halfway through this past season, but I started to watch him more. I started to kind of get an idea of what his strengths and weaknesses are, and I get the appeal. I do. I just am afraid his ceiling isn't high enough. Like, I'm afraid his ceiling isn't going to give you a chance. Like, 2 years from now, if the Giants, like, we're not taking the big steps forward, are they going to be able to move on? Or are they going to find themselves in purgatory, hoping to God that he just gets better and just takes those steps forward? Obviously he took 37 sacks this season, a 20.9% pressure to sack ratio, 5%, I keep saying radio, 5% higher than Cam Ward. I do think that Sanders did a lot of great things, almost had 4,000 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He did fumble a couple times. I know running the football, he had almost 300 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns and 7 fumbles. So, maybe have to be a little bit better with ball security. But, if you watch his footwork, Anthony, in the pocket, man, it's gorgeous. Like, his footwork in the pocket is some of the best you're going to see. Like, he maneuvers the pocket well. He maintains a sturdy base at all times. He's never off his back foot. He's never making off-balance throws. If you watch the way he maneuvers, his feet and his body are in unison. He moves his feet perfectly. He adjusts his angles. He finds pockets. You watch Cam Ward, he's a lot more free-balling. He looks like Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes in terms of footwork, right? Patrick Mahomes is very, very sturdy, but he can do the free-balling stuff, but he's always has a strong base. He doesn't throw off balance. Josh Allen loves to throw off balance. He loves to do crazy stuff, but he's a unicorn, right? So it's hard to use these two guys as examples, but Sanders has the better footwork, the better base. Cam Ward has the better freestyle, backyard football, playmaking type of high caliber type, style of play. That can be boom or bust, right? Like, and I think that's the best way. Like, when we say high ceiling, low floor, another way to say that is boom or bust, right? Boom because of the high ceiling he's going to get, or bust because his floor is much lower because he doesn't have those same fundamentals. It really depends on what type of player the Giants want, and it's going to be interesting. Do they want the guy that's going to walk in with a higher floor on day one, or the guy that's going to develop to possibly be the higher ceiling? And how much time do you give Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen to figure this thing out? And that might be the conversation to have.
That's what I was going to say. That's what that is going to depend on. How much the Giants prioritize their quarterback, their rookie quarterback, making an impact in year one, that's going to have a lot to do with who is in charge of this team. If it's Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and their backs are against the wall and they need to pick up wins immediately, they're going to take the quarterback that they think can win them games in year one of his career. However, if it's a new regime, Alex, if it's a new general manager and a new head coach, and they have time, they have at least 2-3 years to prove themselves worthy, they might take the guy who, sure, might take longer to develop, but might be a better player once he is fully developed. So that's really what it's going to depend on. And that's why these conversations are going to get so interesting. They already are. I think this has been a very interesting and in-depth 30-minute conversation that we've had about these two prospects. Guys, imagine how long and how interesting these conversations are going to be once we open this up to other prospects in the offseason. It's going to be a lot of fun diving into everything throughout the draft season and free agency season as well. But I think that's a really important factor to consider, Alex, is who is making these draft picks, who is coaching these players. Once we get the answer on that, we'll have a better idea of who the Giants might decide to target with their first round and really all of their draft picks in April. But for now, it's kind of hard to tell. They've expressed a lot of interest in both of these guys. They've expressed interest in Cam. They've expressed interest in Shedeur. I think they've expressed a little bit more interest in Sanders. Obviously, a general manager going to a college football team's practices, it's not really commonplace. It's a little bit of an oddity, and it does indicate that the Giants are significantly interested in Sanders. But it also indicates this to me, Alex. I think one of the reasons that the Giants have been to so many Colorado football games and practices, they're trying to build a rapport here. They're trying to develop a relationship with Deion. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, he's made it very clear and obvious. He has said it in the media and in interviews. he has said that he will step in if he doesn't like the landing spot for Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter. And I think one of the things that the Giants are thinking right now, let's get ahead of this whole thing. Let's get ahead of all of these other teams. Let's develop a relationship with Coach Prime. Let's make sure that he likes us. He likes what we're building here. The record might not be great. The team might not look so hot right now. But if we get him to buy in on us and our personalities, buy into the people in the building, might increase our opportunity or our chances of keeping our jobs. It might increase our chances of getting Deion to sign off and give his blessing on Shedeur to the Big Apple. I think that's one of the big things that the Giants are trying to accomplish by going to these Colorado practices. Of course, one of the things that they're trying to accomplish, the big thing that they're trying to accomplish, develop or scout the talent properly, evaluate them, and determine who is worthy of what draft pick. But on top of that, I truly do think developing a rapport and a relationship with Deion Sanders is a big part of this process right now, and that's why they've been so involved in the scouting process at Colorado.
That's a really good point. It has to be some of that, right? Because if you're Deion Sanders and you're looking at the Giants right now, and you're looking at a team that is not coached well, you're looking at an offensive line that is in disarray once again, you're looking at a lack of roster depth, you're looking at all these problems. And then you go look at the Raiders, who are probably the other side of this coin. They're about to go through a whole head coaching change. They're about to go through a whole situation where, they're in disarray too. Like, if you're Deion, the solutions for his son are not great. Like, he's gonna go to a bad team. That's why they're picking 1 through 3, right? He's gonna go to a bad team. But which is the worst of the bunch? Which team has the most hope? If I'm looking at Deion, the best thing that we have for us going right now is the fact that Brian Daboll has maximized Josh Allen in the past. That is the only thing that we can really sit here and say, at least we have that. Because Joe Schoen's not giving me any sort of confidence, man. Like, if I'm Deion, I'm looking at Joe Schoen, I'm like, dude, you're probably the worst GM in football right now. You can't draft well. We'll see how this rookie class does, but we all know how the Giants tend to ruin guys in their second years. I got to see how they do next year before I say this rookie class is good. I love them. I think they have good players, but Giants find a way to regress people sometimes, a lot of times. If you are Deion, you're looking at Joe Schoen saying, you've disrespected a number of your stars. Are you going to disrespect my son? If you're here long term and he has a new contract, are you going to screw him? Are you going to let his best playmakers go? What happens when Malik Neighbors comes down the road and his contract is up for discussion? Are you going to give him a better offensive line? Are you going to invest more resources there? Can we trust you to draft good players? I got questions, man. I got questions for you, Joe. That's what I'd be saying if I was Deion. How are you gonna fix these things for my son? Because right now I see a defense that lacks effort. Right now I see an offense that lacks effort. Right now I see a team that lacks leadership. Are you expecting my son to walk in and be the leader? He can do it. But we need veteran voices here. If I was Deion, I'd be like, Joe, if you want to draft my son, this is what I need from you. I need more offensive line reinforcements. I need a leader in that damn locker room, and I need more defensive support because I don't want my son to be fighting from deficits all the time. You know what I mean? What are you gonna do at DC? Are you gonna fire Shane Bowen because he's been asked this year? That's what I'd be asking if I was Deion, because these are the questions he's probably asking behind the scenes. If we're being honest, what are you going to do to situate my son and set him up for success? What are you going to do for him? How are you going to make sure that he succeeds? You have to have a plan in place if you want to draft Shedeur Sanders. Do I think that's a little crazy? Yeah, you're going to the NFL, man. You should be any team should be able to draft you, no matter what. That's just the reality of being an NFL player, right? But if this is the situation, maybe that's a good thing for the Giants. Maybe it's a good thing that Deion's demanding. He wants to know how they plan to build around Shedeur, because at least he's forcing them to come up with a legitimate plan instead of read, react, and fail. Because the Giants have been very reactionary and very, very prone to failure, right? Think about all the stuff that's happened to them. Anthony and I, before this episode started, were discussing how they missed out on Lassiter, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean, and they end up with Tyler Nubin, who we like, but we needed a cornerback bad. We talked about, what if they kept Xavier McKinney and drafted Lassiter, traded up a couple spots, got Lassiter, right? We'd have Banks, Lassiter, and Xavier McKinney, and we'd have no problems with the secondary right now. Maybe you walk away with Andrew Phillips too. Who knows? Or you take a safety. Or you do whatever you want. We'd be in a much better spot than we are right now. If I was Deion, I'd be asking how do you plan to situate my son? And if I do not agree with your plan, you might not get my son. You know what I mean? I gotta agree with your plan. So that might be the discussions that are happening right now. I don't necessarily agree that's a good thing, because I don't think anyone's father should be that involved in a process for a kid going to the NFL. But it's Deion. It's different. I get it. I think Cam Ward's probably the more humble of the bunch and, not going to come with all the extra legwork. But that's for Joe Schoen and Brandon Brown to figure out, because Brandon Brown seems to be enamored with Shedeur Sanders. And I just can't get this. I can't get the feeling out of my chest that, like, this front office has cornered themselves into making one choice. And a GM, assistant GM, a front office that has pigeonholed themselves into making one decision is not going to make a decision based on logic and realism. It is going to be a decision based on necessity. And we know Joe Schoen wants to draft BPA. Well, we can tell you one thing right now. He's sure as hell not drafting BPA in this draft. Otherwise, it'd be Travis Hunter. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it might be Will Johnson. He's drafting for need at a position he just crucified with Daniel Jones obviously being benched and departed. They have no choice, man. Like, they've cornered themselves into this situation, and the roster construction's been bad. Like, the path forward is going to be very, very interesting for them if they even survive the rest of the season, to be quite honest.
It's going to be a rocky road to the NFL draft. We know that for sure. I mean, listen, the Giants were eliminated from the playoffs on Thanksgiving. That's ridiculous. So we got to go all this way through the rest of the regular season. What is it, like 5 games left that the Giants have to play, knowing that they're playing for nothing? Knowing that losing, as fans, losing is in the best interest of this team? It sucks. It's a shitty reality that we find ourselves in, and it is going to be a rocky finish to the end of the regular season. However, if you're looking at the schedule, it doesn't let up for the Giants. They only face one team that's 500 or below, and it's next week versus the Saints at 500. From there on, it's all winning football teams, and it's all teams that should get the better of the Giants in a major way. So the odds of picking number 1 overall, very high. And you said it best there, Alex. If the Giants set up this roster to go best player available, they wouldn't be taking a quarterback because the best player in this class is not a quarterback. Last year, you couldn't say the same thing. The 5 best quarterbacks in the class, depending on who you asked, might have been a quarterback. This year, not so much. So the Giants are backed into a corner and are going to have to force a quarterback pick. Will it work for them? It's worked for teams in the past. Or will it backfire? Will it blow up in their face? Like it's done for the Giants and many other teams in the past. We will see. But, of course, that's our jobs to determine whether or not the Giants are going to make the right pick and give you guys all of the necessary information and opinions and reactions and takes on all of the moves that they can, should, could, would, maybe do, or don't make right here on Fireside Giants. And it's going to be one hell of an offseason, especially if the Giants really do land the number 1 pick, Alex. Oh, man, we're going to have a lot to discuss. Do they stick and pick? Who do they take? This quarterback, that quarterback, trade down, tank for Archie. What is it going to be? We're going to have a lot to discuss over the next several months, and I'm really excited to do it with this Fireside Giants community. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Fireside Giants sponsored by BetUS. Shout out to them. Sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry. That pretty much will do it. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.